Hello, Dr. Cath here again, and today we're talking about nature on your doorstep. Shropshire is a wonderful county for nature, very rural, and there is almost no way you can live that you're not in hitting distance of a nature reserve of some sort. Here we are at Ray Brook. The local nature reserve is right behind Cine World, so very central. The Ray Brook has kingfishers, dippers, otters, all sorts of river wildlife just waiting there to be seen. So absolutely wonderful place. You can get to it really easily, and that's what we need. We need places that people can get to in walking distance, cycling distance of their home, where they can refresh themselves in the great outdoors. So here we are, back indoors again, so I can show you some nice pictures of the nature on your doorstep in Shropshire. This is in Ellesmere. This is my doorstep, and so quite a lot of the doorstep is in Ellesmere, but everywhere in Shropshire has its own doorstep wildlife. Now, the government recognises that all people should have accessible, nature-rich spaces nearby their homes. That actually means natural England made it a bit clearer, access for everybody to a natural space of around a football pitch in size within 5 minutes walk of home. So that's pretty close. Wilder natural spaces of 500 hectares or more within 10 kilometres. Now, most of us in Shropshire have that much wildlife close to already, but think about the people who don't. Levelling up is going to have some impact on local parks and things, but we still need to make sure that people who are developers, who are planning officers, this sort of thing, think about these things to allow for that. Now, those of us who have gardens are lucky. We have natural space right on our doorsteps. Obviously, it's up to you how natural it is. I really encourage everybody to do at least a bit of wildlife gardening because it does bring nature really close to you. So if you've got a garden, that's a good first step. Make sure it's wildlife friendly. But for those of us who don't, the public parks are fabulous access. The bigger parks in London, there's St James's Park and Hyde Park, huge areas really within a very built up area and easily accessible for everybody. When I lived in London, I used them a lot. It was very soothing to be able to go out during the lunch hour and have a little walk and just get onto the grass, stop feeling the pavement under your feet. Here in Shrewsbury, we've got the Quarry, the Quarry Park. A lot of these parks were either Victorian or earlier. Some of them were bought by town corporations, like the Quarry was, after maybe some industrial use, or in the Quarry's case, it was quarrying, obviously. Some of them were given by philanthropists, people who recognised the fact that the local workforce needed somewhere to get out into the fresh air, into nature. So even, the Quarry was bought in 17 something, so even that far ago, people were conscious of the fact that these open spaces were important to the general population who maybe didn't have access to gardens. I mean, most of them probably didn't. The ones that didn't live in the countryside certainly didn't. So somewhere you could go into, somewhere you could get out of the tarmac, out of the noise, and out into nature. Obviously, the sort of northern cities, places like Manchester and Liverpool, highly industrialised. Often the people who were providing the parks and open spaces were the employers of the lower classes, the working class people who were in need of these areas, and the provision was made. As long as the provision has remained, that's all right, we've got a park. But in case there are cases that parks have been whittled away at, built up here and there, we need to preserve them. In Oswestry, we've got the K Glass Park. As you can see, it's not really very good for wildlife. It's an open space. The kids could kick a ball around. It's somewhere you could have your sandwiches. It's not very nature friendly though, is it? It's not crying out biodiversity. And one of the important things about being in wild spaces being good for you is the better quality it is, and the more biodiversity there is in it, the better it is for you. So it's not just a green space, it's an interesting green space, or an interesting blue space in the case of rivers. Again, we're lucky, we've got plenty of interesting places as well as these town parks. But why can't all the town parks be nature friendly? Adds to the connectivity. Cremorne Gardens in Ellesmere was donated to the people of Ellesmere, was left in the will of Lord Brownlow. It was the gardens of the big house, the Duke of Bridgewater's house, and it was left to the people of Ellesmere for their enjoyment and for the health-giving properties. And parts of it are rather formal garden and parts of it are quite wild, so it's a lovely space. It's much used, it's much appreciated. All sorts of things going on there. There's bee hotels, there's old trees, there's right on the edge of the mere, so all sorts of things going on there. And then on the other side of the road, we have the Castlefield site, which was also part of the Brownlow estate. And this is species-rich grassland. It's been managed, specifically, it was reseeded with meadow hay so that to make it species rich. So it's a really interesting, really diverse, really beautiful site. And not just for the people of Ellesmere, people come from all over to picnic there, to walk there, and to enjoy it. So these spaces are vital. This is part of Castlefield, and the sort of pink haze you can see in the background is a mass of heath-spotted and common-spotted orchids. And about towards the end of May and into June, the meadow flowers will really be coming out, and it's a precious place to walk in. And I know when I was working in the boathouse, I used to walk through it every day, and every day it was like greeting old friends, seeing the new species, and just getting that little bit of a lift after a busy day. So these places are important to all of us. We did some events there, we've done butterfly hunting there, there's lots of different species. It's a valuable site, much more valuable in a way than even the Cremorne Gardens. Much more species diversity, and incredibly more species diversity than Caiglass Park. So these are the spaces that are really going to give us the benefits. The country parks are those larger areas of wild countryside outside of towns. These are the ones you'd need to get a bus or a train, or some of them close enough to cycle to, or drive yourself there. So not quite as on your doorstep, but designed to be fairly near to centres of population. So Colmere one is near Ellesmere. You've got things like the Severn Valley Country Park close to Bridgnorth, Walkmills Meadows in Market Drayton, Greenfields at Whitchurch. Nice areas, slightly different designations. The county tend to run the country parks. Places like Greenfields and Granville and Lightmoor are places the Wildlife Trust runs, but they're all on somebody's doorstep. Maybe not yours, maybe not mine, but somebody's doorstep. And slightly more, these are more species rich, more wild than the town parks, but they're not necessarily somewhere you go to see a nationally rare species. These are somewhere you go because you want to walk in the woods, look at the bluebells, hear the birds singing. They're not a destination for going, well, this week I'm going to go and look for an osprey, I'll go and look here. But they're valuable because they're offering us the chance to get outside. Breathe the fresh air, feel the trees, maybe eat some weeds, find some nibbled pine cones, all sorts of things. Let the kids run about, let them exhaust themselves. And feel the benefit that nature brings us. Around Colmere is absolutely wonderful. There's the wildflower rich meadow when you first get there, and then you get into a mixed deciduous woodland, and then past another little meadow into coniferous woodland, and it's got a bit of everything. So absolutely great place to go to. But explore your local one, because that's the important thing, especially these days with petrol costing so much, transport costing so much. You don't want to go quite so far, and these places on your doorstep allow you to get out in nature. Just a walk through a bluebell wood, something like that. This is a community woodland at Baston Hill. I didn't know it existed until last year, and I ended up doing a couple of events there, and it's a wonderful space, just on the edge of Shrewsbury. The people of Baston Hill have an absolute gem, and it's somewhere they can go. They can walk the dog, they can take the kids out. It's a nice mixed woodland. A lot of it's been planted, especially but it's glorious. They have areas of sort of sensory flower garden with plants for pollinators, and it adjoins the allotments, and they've got a little community orchard there as well. These are all places that you can get involved in. You can actually you can help. You can help with the management. You can help with what you want to see happening there, and they have local groups that are looking after them and directing the way they move. So community involvement is all important to these bits of nature on your doorstep. Look at what you can do. I mean, it could just be writing letters to the council, but it could be doing something much more proactive. And this is a bit of K-Glass Park again, and like I say, it's not very nature friendly. It might really as well be green tarmac. But think of what you could do if you had free rein. This is an area in Oswald Street, a small housing development that was just really grass. And local people took it upon themselves that they wanted more than grass. So they did. And they planted these wonderful flower mixes, which absolutely enliven the whole area. Think of the buzz of the bees and the butterflies and the ladybirds and all the little beetles underneath and all the bugs and the birds coming to eat the bugs, and it's brought it to life. And that was through community involvement. It's through people looking after the nature on their doorstep, not just sitting back going, well, we want nature on our doorstep, obviously we all do, but going, yes, we want nature on our doorstep and we're going to do something about it. And this is a wonderful example of something you can do about it. Obviously, they didn't just go out there and do a bit of guerrilla gardening and plant it. They asked about it, they made inquiries, they found out that it would be acceptable for them to do it, and they've done a really, really nice job of it. Other bits of nature on your doorstep might not be quite so formalised access. A lot of areas have a canal or river running through them. Quite often there's walkways next to them. Water is again very good for your mental health, as a place to be out in amongst, walking along it. Very soothing effect of being by water. So canal banks are a good possibility. This is a slightly wilder bit of canal. It's on the Montgomery Canal. Obviously, it doesn't have through traffic of boats, and it's a botanical paradise, a rather wet botanical paradise, but a botanical paradise. It's lovely. It's absolutely itching with wildlife. You're not going to get that in a town centre, but there is no reason you shouldn't have enough bits of wildlife to attract the insects and the beetles and the bees and things, and have something going on, have a bit of that biodiversity that is so good for you. Graveyards are another good possibility. Quite a lot of graveyards now have a deliberately left wild area, special planting for bees and butterflies. There is a lot, the whole Caring for God's Acre thing is about making cemeteries, graveyards, wildlife friendly. And they're a marvellous resource. When I lived in London, okay, there were the big parks, but some of the best places I found for wildlife were those rather overgrown corners of places like Nunhead Cemetery, Highgate Cemetery. Really old gravestones with ivy and stuff, and they were brilliant for wildlife. First place I ever saw a black redstart. But have a look at your local graveyard. If you're involved with the church, it might be, and your graveyard doesn't have a wildflower area or wildlife area, make it so it does. Get the Sunday school involved. Get anybody involved. Take it over. Make it go the way you want it to. And some bird boxes, swift boxes on the tower maybe. Makes the wildlife come to you. The wildlife area in the St Mary's Church in Ellesmere. Road verges, another little bit of wildlife. You don't even have to be walking. You can just see it as you drive past, lifts your spirits. Believe it or not, this is the roundabout in the middle of the car park of a motorway service station. And this is up in T-Bay, and it's absolutely glorious. It's covered in orchids, ragged robin, oxeye daisies, all sorts of things. It's absolutely heaving with wildlife. And if you step back a few metres from here and look to your right, you'd see the main car park of the service station, and over to your left you've got the M6 roaring by. But you've got this perfect little piece of very species rich, absolutely wonderful wildflower meadow, and it was absolutely heaving with bees when I was there. And obviously I don't think they came across the motorway, they probably came the other way, but it's a lovely thing, and just somewhere to stop on your motorway journey that you can be in wildlife. I mean, it takes away the stress of driving. We sat at the edge of it and had a cup of tea, and by the time we finished, we were completely refreshed. So, absolutely fabulous thing to do on your doorstep. Well, maybe the M6 is on everybody's doorstep, but you know what I mean. And don't forget people's front gardens. It's always worth having a good gawk into somebody's front garden. You may get the odd look, but front gardens are really good for wildlife. And even choose the road you walk down just to get to the shops or something. Go on the one that has the best front gardens, because all these plants and things will be absolutely full of little beetles, little bugs, bees, all sorts of things going on in other people's gardens. So have a nosy, have a look, appreciate their wildlife. If they're out in the garden, have a chat with them, say how much you've appreciated it. Maybe the neighbours would like to do the same. You can end up with a community-wide corridor of wildlife-friendly garden if it can be encouraged. I mean, if that's your front garden, talk to your neighbour, talk to their neighbours, get it going, make a corridor, make it somewhere that's vibrant and living with all sorts of things, rather than just flat grass there, and there. Make corridors. You can do it. You can encourage your doorstep to be as wildlife rich and as species rich as anywhere. Even Tesco's car park. Look at that. Of course, other supermarkets are available. Many of them have this sort of rather standardised planting. But one of the best things about them is they quite often have rowan trees. Sometimes rather odd coloured rowan trees, but waxwings don't care, and these are really the places to spot waxwings in the winter. But during the summer, there'll be flowering stuff, there'll be bees there, all sorts of things. You can appreciate nature even when you pick up the weekly shop. Some of the things you might see, bees, ladybirds, butterflies, horrorflies, pigeons, of course, get absolutely everywhere. But also in the parks and in the gardens, there'll be all sorts of what used to be woodland birds, but they've moved into inhabited spaces because what they need is there. The shelter's there, the food's there, and they're perfectly safe. So just carefully watch out. Maybe a few sparrows or a robin or a wren. And don't forget to look up at the swifts. Birds fly, there's always something going on. Nature is all around us. If we're really lucky, here's something you might see in built-up areas. Peregrine falcons. They're beginning to nest on churches, high buildings, office blocks, kestrels too. So they're there because all those pigeons are there. They found somewhere that to them is a cliff. They don't see it as a church, they see it as a cliff. It's the ideal place for them. So keep looking up, keep listening, and you never know what you might see right on your doorstep. Squirrels, obviously common in the parks. Don't try feeding them. I got badly bitten by one once. Nasty little creatures. Urban foxes, see them in the daylight much more often than you see them in the countryside. But they're all out there. They're all looking for somewhere safe to be, somewhere safe to live. If we can provide it, they will come. So, your new next door neighbour. Given the chance, nature gets everywhere. Give it as much of a chance as we can. Little spaces, big spaces, join together with the community, pester the council. Don't let them, if you see them with weed killers on the pavements, tell them you don't want them. Tell them you don't like it. Make yourself heard. And even more important, to really make yourself heard, join Shropshire Wildlife Trust. The more voices we have, the louder we can shout, and the more we can do to keep the wildlife on your doorstep really wild, and to make the bits that aren't quite wild enough even more wild. So have a think about it. If there's one thing you want to do to really make a difference, join us. And thank you very much.